going to begin our session for the world religion class, and we're in lesson 4, which is Confucianism. And I am recording, and this is going to be used in the future for some online classes. This will be a completely online class, so you guys will be passing your knowledge along to others in the future. So I think we got Sharon Thomas is with us today also. So she's not on the screen. That's okay, Sharon. If you, but when you have something to say, Sharon, feel free to pop in there on the screen for us. And just like that, like I'm using the Who's Talking format here, the person will pop up on the screen when they are talking. So let's go to question 1. Explain the problem Confucius faced from the reading. And who wants to handle that first? Okay, let's start with Maria. She put her hand up. Go ahead, Maria.
Okay, so the problem that he faced is that at his time, there was a lot of conflict in China, wars and social chaos, and the traditional values were kind of going out of style in a way. And so he wanted to restore all that, and he was really emphasizing the importance of treating each other right, the importance of education, and so there could be a better society for everyone. And family was very critical.
Yeah, very good. Good answer to that. Let me open it up before I comment to anybody. I think I have another hand here. Okay, let's go to Sharon Wilson, and then we'll go to Jamie.
I'm pretty much the same that Maria said. The problem they listed is social anarchy. And they kind of related that to the time in Judges when each man was doing what was right in his own eyes. So they were needing social cohesion, I think is what they called it.
Very good. Yeah, definitely. And Jamie?
That's what I was going to say too about the reference to the time of the judges, because that's sort of
okay.
Me that everyone did what was right in his own eyes.
Yeah, very good. Now, I used to be into watching these old karate movies, and a lot of them, the kung fu movies, a lot of them dealt with this period of time in Chinese history when there were a lot of warlords, and everybody was doing what he wanted. If you had power under this warlord, then you fought against that warlord. And a lot of those old movies dealt with that time period in China. So Confucius was seeing all this disorder, and he realized that something needs to be done. We can't get along in this fashion. And I liked how you guys mentioned the period of the judges. Again, before they got a king, before there was a central authority, everybody was kind of doing their own thing, and a judge would come along to try to reorganize things at times. So good job on the first question there. And Jamie, do you have another question, or is that just your hand up already? Okay, very good. Okay, so the second question, why should Confucius be considered a pragmatist? Who wants to tackle that first? Okay, let's go with Sharon Wilson first.
Well, in my notes I had written because he was trying to create a proper society, so he used common sense and practical wisdom and concentrated on the here and now instead of otherworldly. So I think they called it like he did deliberate tradition. Anyway, so basically because he concentrated on the here and now and used common sense and practical wisdom.
Yeah, I like the word practical you used there, common sense. I'm going to mention a word that we use today when we talk about certain politicians. I'll get to that in a minute, but let me see. Let's go with Jamie.
Sorry about that. One of the other things, he preferred integrity to power and wealth. And so he had to champion the cause of the common people against the nobility. So he had all of that, and he didn't feel that he was like a sage. He said that he didn't think he accomplished all of the things a sage would accomplish. And he thought his theories wouldn't take hold unless he showed that they worked.
Very good, very good. Sharon Thomas or Maria, any thoughts on this one? If not, that's okay.
I had the same things everybody else said.
Okay, Maria, thank you.
To be honest with you, I had to text Sharon Wilson because I looked at the definitions for pragmatist and the definitions that I got were a little bit different. So it's not a word that I'm really familiar with, so I kind of struggled with this one, but what I wrote down was how he rejected the realist answer of force, and also the mohist idea of love. He the one quote that I got was, "No one else finds tolerable to insist that you, sorry, I'm struggling here, that you should be as concerned for the other man's family as for your own. To harp exclusively on love is to preach ways without means." So he was, as everyone else has said, very practical, down to earth. I kind of struggled on this one, sorry.
No, that's okay. So, for me, when I think of somebody who's pragmatic or a pragmatic politician, for me, it's someone who's trying to find that middle ground, not one way completely to the right, not one way completely to the left, going with what the majority view is probably where that is at. For me, that's a pragmatist. And so by him following what were the established rules and mores within Chinese society, that's kind of why they consider him a pragmatist. There were other schools of thinking. There were the people, as you mentioned, like Mohism and realists, where they were focusing on the laws, and the people that were into love said, we should go in this direction. So he's kind of getting into that middle ground amongst all these different views that were around at his time. Something that was practical that, most of the people kind of agreed with as far as, how to deal with life and ethics and things of that nature. I see a hand up here. Sharon, go ahead. Is that your hand up?
It is.
Okay.
So I don't want to jump too far ahead in the video, but when he showed that graph and he showed Taoism was the spiritual, Confucius was the ethical, and the legalist, which I assumed was the realists, was the practical. They also said that they were the pragmatists. So I was a little confused by the definition. I think that's what threw me.
Okay. So remind me, did it say that the law people were the realists? They were pragmatic, or who did it say was pragmatic?
Yes, the practical legalism. Well, it said legalism, and I took that as being the realists.
Okay. So there definitely, when you think of legalism, like let's say in Judaism, for example, we are told that we're legalists in the Church of God, but we don't believe that. But there there definitely were legalists within Judaism that took it an extra level where there was an oral law and the written law, and they said, hey, in order to protect the written law, you're going to do the oral law. So there was a school of thought that was really into the law to that degree. And then there were others who were just looking at it as, hey, if this is the way to live the best life, we're going to take some of this and we're going to take some of that. So that's kind of what I think of the pragmatist, is taking from different ideas for the best fit for the people, where some people could take one of those ideas just to an extreme. So
Okay.
the pragmatist is not taking things to an extreme. And I'd have to look at that video again to get the sense of that caused your confusion. But does that help at all?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, okay. All right, let's move on then to question 3. What were Confucius's views on God and the afterlife? What do you ladies think about that question? Let's begin with Maria.
So what I got is that he was not interested in the afterlife or worrying about what happens then, because to him what mattered was living a meaningful life right now, the present. That was what's important. And it was like no notion of expecting rewards after life or anything like that. So to him, that was what's important, and he never considered himself a god. And I think it's just in the more recent years that people have kind of venerated him in that sense. But no, when he was alive, that was not. And I think maybe the notion of at some point in time there were maybe ideas of afterlife, but maybe when they were mixed with Buddhism, maybe. I'm not sure. I wasn't too clear about that.
Yeah,
Um, one
good answer. Yeah, go ahead, continue.
there was one thing that I thought it was interesting. They did the ancestors were very important. So that was kind of interesting that they would consider who lived before, and they kind of worship the ancestors a lot, and they would mourn them for 3 years, and do rituals and things like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, very good, very good. I'm going to comment on some of what you said here in a minute, but let me go to Jamie right now.
Yeah, that was along the lines that I got out of it. He kind of shifted the focus from heaven to earth, from that ancestral worship to more to the family, and put that emphasis on respect and care for one's parents and ancestors. And it seemed like he didn't like challenge those ancient ideas, but he just sort of like switched it around. Like he wasn't like making the afterlife important. It's more what's here and now. It seemed like that seems like that's what he had said. His like the most sacred tie is among the blood relatives. That's the quote that I thought made a lot of sense, that those obligations were to the living were more important than to the dead.
Yeah, very good, very good. Sharon Thomas.
I agree with what they've said before. There wasn't a God, but there was a supreme ancestor that ruled over everyone, and he was really big on the classics. So reading from those that had come before and using what they had learned and their experiences is what he was putting into practice.
Very good, very good. So let me try to help with a little bit of this. Remember now, similar to Buddhism, Siddhartha Gautama shows up at a time where there already is religion there in India and Nepal. There are all these different beliefs and ideas about, what happens when you die, gods, goddesses, all that kind of stuff. So in China, there were some ideas like that, okay, about gods and goddesses and heaven and this, that, and the other thing. So some of those ideas were out there, but Confucianism is not speculating about all that stuff, similar to original Buddhism. Original Buddhism took some of that stuff in, but it didn't make it as religious as the Hindus made it, I'll say. And so the same thing's true in the Chinese religion, where when Confucius comes along, rather than focus on what people are thinking as far as the supernatural realm, he's just focusing on a day-to-day life, dealing with the here and now, similar to the Buddha. Okay, so the Buddha kind of did that with Hinduism. He kind of gives you this new religion that came out of what was there in India, and he's changing a few things, but there are some similar concepts. Same thing with Confucius, but what's different about Confucius is he definitely makes it more of a way of life, an ethical framework, and not necessarily a religion. So you'll see that debate a lot about how's Buddhism different from Confucianism. Many will say, well, Buddhism really is a religion, where some people will say Confucianism is not a religion. It's just an ethical system because of what Confucius had to say about things, and not really speculating about all the supernatural stuff and the God stuff, even though you will hear some people say that Confucius wasn't denying God or this concept of heaven. We're going to get into this in Taoism. You're going to see some of the religious aspects that were going on in China that became Taoism, which is very, very close to the time frame of Confucianism and very close to the time frame of Buddhism. That's another thing I wanted to say that I almost forgot. When you look at the times here of when Confucianism comes along, when Buddhism comes along, when Taoism comes along, it's a very similar time frame. We're talking, 500s, 400s BC, which is interesting because what has happened, at least from our framework, in the 500s BC, is God isn't working with Israel and Judah anymore, right? Remember, God lets Israel go, Judah messes up, and so he's not having that relationship like he did before. And then what happens from about the 500s BC until Christ comes? It's kind of a time where there is no holy books or holy writings anymore for Christianity or Judaism. And I find that fascinating that these religions pop up in the East at that specific time and become major religions for the Eastern world. Now, what am I saying there? I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just saying I find it interesting that the true religion that we believe in is kind of going into a dark period where God is not directly working with his people anymore. And what happens a little to the east? These major religions pop up all of a sudden to take people away, from God. I don't know. I'm just saying it's fascinating to me the time frame that these religions pop up. Sharon Wilson, go ahead.
Well, along those lines, it makes me wonder if, people tend to try and find things to fill that void. I think we were kind of created to need God in a way. And I think they look, and that's the perfect time for Satan's influence to become involved also. But I just feel like maybe during that time they were looking to fill that void that they, didn't realize they needed once Judaism was not as prolific.
Yeah, yeah. And again, we're dealing with the Eastern world here, India, China, which is kind of distant from the Middle East and where Judaism is, or what became Judaism is, and where we'll get into the Western religions later, but they are different than the Eastern religions. So that you definitely could argue that, hey, wait, this is apples and oranges we're talking about here, and I get that, but I just find it fascinating that the major Eastern religions pop up in this period of time, right before 400 years before Christ comes along. Um, okay, let me just make a couple other points here on question 3, the God and the afterlife question. Let me see what I got in my notes. Again, Confucius wasn't concerned like, oh, you don't have to worry about what you got to do for God. He's focused on what you got to do with your relationships with each person in your life. I'm not going to speculate on that. He said um, there was this concept of the Tao, which we're going to get into next week, and heaven was called the Tian. Some believe there were gods or supernatural beings up there, but again, you don't get Confucius saying too much about that, not explicitly stating anything about it, but there's an idea that he may have accepted that there was something, but he didn't get too much into it. Sharon Thomas.
I just had a thought or kind of a question. Is it possible that along the idea of this break between when God was working with Israel and Judah and he isn't anymore and they pop up, that in the dispersion, couldn't they have gone, some people have gone that far or gone close, and because they do have some similarities there that just kind of make me wonder.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in the next question here. And again, when we think about uh, Israel going up into Syria and, east of there, Syria being put down by Babylon eventually, and then those people, just kind of moving about. I'm sure there was a mixing of thoughts and ideas that would have moved from one side to the other here. No doubt about it. That's some of the speculation about Buddhism in India, which is definitely closer to the West than China is. But obviously, they China and India border each other too. So again, I don't know. I don't know because there were people already in China who were having different forms of religion there that we'll get into next week. But let's talk about this fourth question, and that'll have us address this a little bit. How is Confucianism similar and different from Christianity? And Maria, why don't you lead us off with that, please?
Well, the first thing that was obvious to me is the values. One that is, the one that they talk the most about is the way you should treat each other, and that treat others the way you want to be treated. The golden rule.
Yes.
Such is crucial for Christianity, so I thought that was interesting that they would make that as an important ethical point. And humility too, and just in general, that you don't think about yourself. It's not about the self. It's about what you can do in your society to make your society better.
Yeah, very big point there. The individual is not as important. Like, in America and in the West, we talk a lot about individual rights and individual freedoms and things like that. And when you look at the East, there's more of this concept of the community. Whether
Mhm.
you're talking about Japan or China, again, China is still, I think, the most populous nation. I think India and China are right there, real close now. But you've got all these people in China, and the idea is more the community. When you think about why is communism still working in China, I think part of the reason is because the Chinese, in their history, in their quote unquote religion, the concept of the community is more important than the concept of the individual. So communism kind of fits into that type of thinking when you think about it.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to take care of everybody. Everybody needs to be taken care of by everybody else. That kind of fits into this idea of, make sure this relationship is good with this person, make sure the relationship's good with that person, make sure, fix these relationships with people rather than fixing yourself necessarily. Okay. So I wanted to make sure you guys get that point. I wanted to address about, how is the Eastern thinking different from Western thinking. Hopefully, you're starting to see some of those differences, which will become apparent when we get into the Western religions. But that's a big one, this idea of community in the thinking in the East versus what's over in the West. This individual relationship, with God, that, everybody's an individual and there's this one God idea, where in the East, again, there's plenty of gods, or we don't care if there are gods. But what we care about, again, at least in China and those places, was making sure that everything's good in your life. Let's get your life going, because that'll help the lives of everybody. Um, so yeah, that was good, Maria. Who else wants to? Let's see. I got some hands up. Let me go to the list here. Let's go to Sharon and then Jamie. Sharon Thomas.
This reminded me of not just Judaism, but um, uh, somewhat in our culture too. But moral ideas are driven into the people by every possible means: temples, theaters, homes, toys, proverbs, schools, history, and stories, until they become habits in daily life. Even festivals and parades were, in this sense, religious in character. By such means, even a society constituted of individuals can, if it puts itself to the task, spin an enveloping tradition, a power of suggestion that can prompt its members to behave socially even when the law is not looking. And that did remind me of Judaism, when it talks about teach them to your children when you're walking by the way, when you're in your lying down, when you rise up. Um, so that was a similarity for me.
Okay, very good, very good. Yeah, I'm thinking about Chinese New Year celebrations out here in LA. They're real big. And, remember when COVID hit, it was right at the time of Chinese New Year, and everybody was starting to travel in China. And that whole thing is about, you go back to your family, and those relationships. That's part of that whole thing. And that's the biggest time of the year for the Chinese, is Chinese New Year, when you go back to the family, to your village or wherever you came from. All this travel's going on in the country, and you're reestablishing those relationships, getting right with your family again, in a sense, is very important. It goes back to Confucian principles, all these years later. Let's go to Jamie, and then we'll go to Sharon Wilson, and then Maria. Oh, I think we had Maria. Let's go to Jamie right now.
Okay. I mean, it wasn't really stated, but I sort of inferred, in Matthew like 22, Jesus gives the two greatest commandments, love God with your whole heart and whole soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. They take that part, the love your neighbor as yourself part, and that seems like it encompasses that Confucian ethics. And also the commandments, the 10 commandments, the first four they negate, but the last six, it seems like that's all about their culture. So it was kind of like a give and take type thing.
Yeah, very good, Jamie. I agree with you. When we think of the commandment of honoring your mother and father, again, that's a very important thing in Chinese culture and principle there. You may have heard the phrase the tiger moms, Chinese tiger moms who kind of tell the children, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to play an instrument and take extra classes, and so the respect for the mother and the father is there, that the kids are very submissive in that regard. And again, I'm not saying that all Chinese kids are like that. I'm generalizing, but it is a generalization that is made about the Chinese, and how they're gonna. Well, I remember when I was living in Maryland, there was a school for a Chinese school on Sunday where all the Chinese kids would come to this public junior high school to learn Chinese cultural things. And there were other schools within the county I lived in where they did similar things, where the Chinese would all come in to a school on a Sunday and they would teach their kids their cultural stuff on Sunday, as in addition to the regular school they're doing Monday through Friday and all that. But there was this aspect of following the traditions of the elders, and learning Chinese language, learning Chinese history and culture and all those types of things, which you see that in other ethnic communities, but when a lot of these groups have come to the United States, after a few generations, that dissipates a little bit. And again, I'm not sure how new these particular Chinese were, but I mean, Chinese have been in the United States for a long time now, just like many other ethnic groups. So that is something I remember seeing that, and thinking about Confucianism, and I'm relating that to some of these principles. Let's go to Sharon Wilson.
I mean, most of it has been covered, but I had made a note on that particular question on the way that we're similar is they did talk about like an ethical way of life, or human heartedness, I think was mentioned. And then they talk about maturity. And I just think as a Christian, those are things we look for, although we look to God, but those are some of the principles that we look at. And they talked a lot about ritual and then loving the arts. I mean, so a lot of their ethical way of life is the way you would want to live as a Christian. And that's been mentioned by others too already tonight. So just concurring with everyone.
Okay, very good, very good. So you've mentioned a number of similarities. Anybody want to mention some differences between Confucianism and Christianity? Sharon Thomas.
The two that stuck out to me were no supreme personal God and no recognition of a need of a savior.
Very good, definitely. That is major. When you think of a Holy Spirit who is coming from God to you and then telling you, how you should do this, how you should do that. That's not there. It's the you yourself who's deciding these things. Within Confucianism, the relationships are what should tell you this and that, not some spirit that is going to be telling you that. Again, no savior. is out there for the Confucianist system. Um, Human beings are good because of their own effort, and not necessarily God God involvement in making you better. It's through your personal endeavor to get better. Very good. Okay, let's move on to there were two videos again in this particular lesson. So anything you got out of the videos? One was kind of a conversation about a guy who's written a book, and he's being interviewed and asked some questions about Confucianism. And then the other one was kind of an overview on Confucianism. Any thoughts from your viewing of the videos? What came up for you? Okay, Sharon Thomas.
I feel like I'm hogging it. I don't mean to.
No, that's okay. We don't have a lot of folks tonight. So.
The first video, what stuck out for me, he did tell us what Confucius's name was at the beginning, but this guy told us how it got Latinized into
Okay.
Confucius, and I thought that that was interesting. And he reiterated the fact that he really hadn't come teaching anything new. He was just bringing back the traditions that he found that they knew from the what had been in the past, but also what he had been reading in the classics. And then for me, the second video brought up, which I hadn't even thought about. It made a lot of sense, but the yin and the yang, and I don't know how long that's been around. And you can't be human by yourself. I thought that was an interesting thought.
Yeah, that is an interesting thought when you begin to think about what God is really, what we believe God is doing. The idea of family is really essential to our biblical understanding. And again, their whole thing about relationships and family relationships, et cetera, I can definitely see that as a similarity. The ideas are a little different, but there are similarities in those ideas with emphasis on family in Confucianism, and again, emphasis on the God family in our understanding of the Bible. Good points. Thank you for that. Let's see. We got another hand up here. Let's go to we'll go to Maria and then Sharon Wilson.
In the second video, what caught my attention is that he mentioned that during the Han Dynasty, Confucianism was considered religion. It was the state religion. So I thought that was interesting that he would call it religion then.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Because there was a time in their history where it did kind of like similar to like communism is kind of like the state religion in China now. Well, there was a Confucian era, and again, the Confucian principles are still there. But yeah, there was definitely a time in Chinese history where that kind of just took over. Yeah, good point. You wanted to say something else, Maria?
And I think for the second video, he was mentioned that the two important things were the ren and the li, the propriety and in your heart. And then he said that those two things make you human.
Okay, sure.
So that's like what makes you human.
Right, right. Yeah, they're using Chinese terms there. Again, just that ethical idea that's being expounded there. Thank you, Maria. Let's go to Sharon Wilson, and then we'll go to Jamie.
I made note in the second video when they were asked about concept of God. They said decidedly not, but that came later with Neo, or the more modern Confucianism, and strongly influenced by Buddhism. And I think you've mentioned that before, but like you, I think you had mentioned, you can see people worshiping maybe a Confucius in a temple or something, but that wasn't the way it was when he was on the earth. So I just made note of that. So they do look at it in a godly way more so now than they did at the time.
Yeah, great point, Sharon. And you will see that, as I said, I think last week also, or with Hinduism, that the religion develops over time. Again, original Christianity, much different from some things that are calling themselves Christianity today. Same thing is true with Buddhism. Same thing is true in Confucianism. Again, he didn't focus on gods in the afterlife, but you have people in China today who would consider themselves Confucian, but they definitely speculate about heaven and afterlife and things of that nature. There's a mixing of the religion similar to the syncretism that's come into Christianity around concepts dealing with the afterlife. Heaven and hell, again, are not in original Christianity, but people would say, "Oh, most Christians believe in some type of a heaven or hell today." So again, you see this throughout the major religions, this development or evolution over time of the religion. Jamie.
Now, it struck me in the second video when he had said that Confucianism is the most anti-American or un-American of the religions. And, you know, and I guess just the whole concept of that, it just sort of, by that statement, it just sort of kind of gelled like, yeah, because we're all about ourselves and self-interest above everything else. So that sort of hit me there. And then also the fact that with, as you said, like with Neo Confucianism, that they began to worship him, you know, as a god in the temples, and that's something that he himself, you know, I don't think wanted that.
Yeah, good point about the idea of the individual versus the society thing. And I addressed that a little bit earlier with how the Chinese mindset is much different than the Western mindset, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's all this history with this way of thinking there. The religious thinking there has been like this all these years, and parents teach their children that, so it gets ingrained in your head that you got to do the right thing. Don't speak up, don't make waves, don't cause trouble for your family. We're here in the States. Part of it is thinking about the individual. You get salvation through your relationship with Christ. Okay, it's not through your relationship with your parents or relationship with somebody else. It's a one-on-one thing. And the freedom that Christianity gives you when you look back at the history of God with Israel, and the idea that when Christ came, now we got scriptures in the New Testament saying there's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female. It's breaking down all those barriers that society and culture put up. Don't mess with the Gentiles if you're a Jew, and men are more important than women. Patriarchal societies, and what Christ is saying, that hey, in the ultimate state of being, when you get salvation, there's no sexes, there's no Jews or Greeks, no this or that. We're all going to be connected through this. So again, in a roundabout way, that gets back at the importance of community that the Chinese have. There are these connections, and there are also these differences. No doubt about it. Okay, let's go to the last question. Um, Again, what did you learn about the importance of family in this particular chapter with Confucianism? Sharon Wilson.
Um, Simply put, they reiterated that the family is the basic unit of society, and that every action affects someone else. And of course, they went into the five constant relationships that we've mentioned about parent and child and husband and wife and so. But um, I mean, that's still, I still feel that's critical. That is the basic unit of society, and God's all about family. So I think they reiterated that.
Yeah, that's a great point. The importance of family in this ethic or this religion. And again, that is a major point in our religion too. No doubt about it. I think that God has allowed Satan to manipulate the world, but within that manipulation, there are also aspects of the true religion sprinkled in to these other religions also. And I think part of it is for Satan to manipulate people who have this essence of God in them, this spirit in them, which can connect to the true God. He's got to manipulate what the truth is. And in manipulating the truth, there are some elements of truth because it's got to make sense. It's got to fit in some way, or it's not going to register for us who have this God impulse in us, I'll say. So by using some of these truths, again, Hinduism, you become one with the ultimate God. Okay, well, we read in the Bible, you want to be one with the Father and the Son. Of Confucianism, the family and all the relationships that come out of that are so essential to your life. Yeah, through the family relationships, we learn what love is in Christianity, and God is creating a family of beings. Interesting that Confucianism is so hung up on the family and that those relationships. I could go on, but I won't. Let me go to Sharon Thomas.
Just to add a little bit to what Sharon said, there was that Chinese legend which credits the hero who invented the family with elevating the Chinese from animal to a human level. Kind of reminded me a little bit of evolution. And then the other side was the respect for the aged. Years bring not only experience and seasoning, but a ripening of wisdom and mellowing of spirit. On counts that matter most, the old are ahead of us. So he had a real respect for the aged, which I think we are losing that.
Yeah, we are losing it, but there are some scriptures in the Bible that talk about the importance of the person who's older should be respected and has knowledge and wisdom. That was interesting what you said about the animals, leading to the idea that came to you of evolution being thrown in there in some way. Interesting. I forgot about that in the reading, and that is an interesting idea there with mixing the ideas into these other religions. Jamie.
Yes. Um, what sort of impressed me was that, with the family and that importance, that a single family unit might embrace 8 generations in one single household. And that sort of like surprised me. They said as many as 30 people in that one house and still considered a single family, and that they have titles for over 115 different relationships of family. So they just really trace their lineage and their generational people, and then that sort of tied back to that the Chinese Empire has lasted over 2,000 years, and it's because those Confucian values have merged so that it's difficult to separate the two. That this is the type of people, this is ingrained in their culture and their daily way of living and how they interact with one another.
Great details you're all putting in here in this last question. Really good. Great points. Thank you. I don't need to say anything about that. Maria.
It just made me think of something. We adopted a girl from China 17 years ago. She was abandoned. And so it makes you think what happened with that concept of family, because I guess it could be that just the corruption of the communist system that made people to start disregarding their kids just because there were too many. So the government tells you have to get rid of a child because, we just can't afford having it or whatever it was. And so there was all these years that China was just telling people that they could only have one child. And it was horrible. And you wonder what happened with that value of family, and then there you go, this happens.
Great point, Maria. That would be something to discuss further. We don't have time, but just quickly, again, the one-child policy in China. One of the reasons they implemented it was because they felt like they had too many people, and it may cause problems down the road. But now they've changed that because they aren't having as many people as they feel they need now,
Well,
which is causing problems for them. And India is actually surpassing them very soon, if not already, in numbers of people. And so why would that happen to a culture that was so ingrained with the family being important? I think some of it has to do with the idea that the government authority should be listened to, that, in order to be a proper citizen, you need to listen to that authority over you, which is the government, communist government. I think that there's this two things bumping up against each other there in China with the one child policy. Hey, we're being told by the authority we need to do this, even though family is so important to us. So there's that dissonance there for some Chinese who didn't like that. And like you're saying, a lot of kids, when a daughter was born, they sent them away to be adopted, and some were aborted when if they knew that they were having a daughter, because they wanted to have a son, because again it's a patriarchal society also. So again, if you see a lot of the adopted kids that have come to the US over the years in other countries, I would venture to bet that a lot more of them were little girls than little boys.
well,
But great point. Go ahead.
that's one of the reasons too they had to change the policy, because they have less women now. They need them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's harder for the boys to find somebody to marry. But yeah, that's an interesting. I'm sure sociologists have probably written some papers about that. But interesting point there. Yeah.
One more thing. I have a friend who's Chinese that I made through school, that my son was friends with the little kid who was Chinese, and we became friends. And I noticed how important it was for her to educate her kids in everything possible, like get them involved in everything available to them. And the kids can say no. They just had to do what mom said. So that was even living here, and I think the kids may have been born here, I don't remember. But even here, they decided to stay here, living in America, but they still have their traditions ingrained, and the kids had to do what mom said.
Yeah.
They're over.
Right. I've definitely read some articles on that concept. Now, I'm sure there are other ethnic mothers who are known like that, but definitely it's a thing that you hear about with the Chinese mother. Again, I'm generalizing here, but there's definitely something to that, and it goes back to I believe these Confucian principles here. Okay, very good. Okay, did somebody else have their hand up there? Okay, let me just open it up for any closing comments. Anything come to mind in our discussion tonight that is still there on your noggin that you want to express right now? Sharon Thomas.
This is a question. On page 168, there's the short exchange. It says, when asked, should one love one's enemy, those who do us harm? Confucius replied, by no means. Answer hatred with justice and love with benevolence. Otherwise, you would waste your benevolence. My question is, I agree with him in the sense of answer hatred with justice. And I'm thinking about, in scriptures it says, love your enemies, but I don't think that Jesus meant that we were supposed to be run over the top of. So that answers that. But I'm
So
not so.
go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I guess my question is, could we say that this was a teaching? I'm sorry, my daughter came in the room. That this is a teaching similar to the scriptures, or would we say, no, this is not what Jesus would mean?
So good question. Again, I'm thinking of the statement in the New Testament: if somebody strikes, one cheek, turn the other
Mm-hmm.
also. But it doesn't say that if somebody's about to kill you, let them also kill the person next to you. So the cheek idea that people use to say that we should be pacifists or something like that. Obviously, we can't take one scripture to make the doctrine. When we look at the history of the Bible and all the history in there, we see that no doubt when Jesus came to the earth, he allowed himself to be killed for a real big reason. Okay, that doesn't mean that every Christian who's walking down the street and somebody wants to take your wallet or is going to shoot you or harm you, that you can't defend yourself. Of course you could, because that is showing love, not only to yourself but to someone you may be protecting. So this is bigger than just one scripture. Of course, let's look at all the scriptures, and we can see that in different circumstances, different things should be coming up. But in regard to why I think Confucius is saying it this way, should one love one's enemy, those who do us harm? Confucius replied, by no means. Answer hatred with justice and love with benevolence. So what he's saying there, he's keeping to that ethical standard of right relationship. What he's saying is, if someone is out to harm us in our relationships, that's not good for society. If we just let people do whatever they want, think back to where he's coming from, the Warring States period, where you had these different warlords taking control and by might rather than being right. So he's saying that's not the way for society to operate. Society needs to operate with justice. And again, that gets back to the Bible and God's law. Hey, if somebody murders somebody, they can be put to death. So there's some similarity here with God's ultimate plan. But I think the difference is that for certain purposes, a Christian has to realize that they have to sacrifice their self um, for what God's purpose really is in the world. So there may be instances where that is counterintuitive to the ethics of a society. That no, why would you sacrifice yourself for no other reason than you know for well, I guess if you sacrifice yourself in Chinese ethics, um, the sacrifice would be you could have sacrifice in Chinese ethics where you're submitting to the will of the mother, let's say, like we were talking about earlier, because your mother wants you to do this and you're going to do it even if you don't like to do it to maintain that correct relationship there. Where there is some of that in Christianity too, where, hey, you're going to try to make that marriage work as long as both people are Christians and believe, hey, we're going to get past these issues. We're going to sacrifice a little for that relationship. So, yeah, again, with just that one statement there, should one love one's enemies, those who do us harm? By no means. So obviously, love in the Christian perspective is that, if you really do love someone, you're not going to harm them. So I can see this relating to what we believe, but I get why you're questioning it because of some scriptures in the Bible. But I think when you look at all the scriptures in the Bible, this doesn't seem too far off. You get what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, I get it. To me, it seems like an easy answer if somebody's trying to bodily harm you or your family. But I was thinking more in terms of, you're in the office, you're in your job, and somebody's trying to do something to you, put one over on you, or a lot of competition or whatever. I've been in situations where people and talking to somebody and like, well, you need to love your enemy. Well, this kind of gave me a different point of view, and there also needs to be justice. So, do we just turn the other cheek and let people walk all over the top of us, or do we actually work for a resolution, which is what I think Confucius was trying to do? Everything you do is he seemed to be saying every situation is an opportunity to learn to be kind, but also to help the other person to come to a resolution in um, situations where you're not on the same page. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense, and definitely, I can see that in a Christian society that justice is important. That's why we got the system of law that we do. That people have these judges who are going to make decisions when there's disagreement or someone's harming somebody else. So again, that would fit in with Confucian ethics and Christian ethics too. I think they're very congruent there when you look at this particular question. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any final comments for tonight? Okay. Well, we're going to send you the video tomorrow, and we'll send you the notes to open up lesson number 5. We're going to get into the last Eastern religion that's Taoism. So you can begin, if you haven't started reading that chapter, you want to start reading that. And we'll see you back here next Thursday, same time. Thanks, ladies. Have a good
Bye-bye.
evening.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
This conference will now be recorded.